Hi, I'm Beth, and I'm going to show you how to make this adorable fabric bin. We're using this cute geometric pink and gray fabric. It's the Soho line from Northcott. So let's get started. So first you'll lay out your 1.5 by 35 inch strips in the order that you would like them to be on your fabric bin. And when you're sewing long strips, to avoid them bowing or just getting a little stretched out, you would want to sew them together in pairs. So group them in pairs, we'll sew them together, and then we'll flip it and sew them together the opposite way. So I have switched out my foot for the 1/4 inch foot with guide. This also will help you keep a nice consistent seam allowance. Now that you've sewn your two sets together, we're going to turn all of our strips around. Then we can sew this one to this pair, and then we'll be sewing down the opposite direction. Now we'll join our final two sets. Now that you have your strips sewn together, we're going to subcut this into 6 5.5 inch wide segments. Now we turn our pieces vertically and we're going to sew those together to create the bin bottom. Now lay out your 30.5 inch strips in the same order that you used for the bottom, and then we'll use that same technique to sew these together in pairs, turn them, and then sew the set together. Once that strip set is sewn together, then we can sew the top strip set to the bottom strip set. Next, we're going to take our lining rectangle and our piece of heavyweight fusible interfacing. We're using Heat and Bond, and we're on a medium setting with our iron and with steam. So we'll flip this over and put this wrong side up, and then you want to use your bumpy side of your fusible and put that down on your piece. Now we're using a pressing cloth as per the instructions. Take our iron and you just want to hold it in place for 10 to 15 seconds and then move to the next spot. Once you have that fused, we're going to stitch the exterior to the lining. So we're going to put right sides together and stitch along the top of our bin. Next, we're going to spray baste and add our batting. So we're using our spray and bond adhesive from Thermoweb, and we have put down a couple pieces of paper here to protect our table. And you want to shake this well before using, and then about 12 inches away and just give it a nice light coat. And then take our batting piece and line it up. The nice thing is this is repositionable, so if you get it crooked, go ahead and pick it back up and then smooth it out. Next, we'll fold the piece in half, and we're going to sew along the short end here to make a tube. Next, turn right side out. And then we're folding in half at the top of the bin and tucking the lining inside. And then press with your fingers along the top to get a nice edge. Once you've created your tube, now it's time to quilt the project. So we've added our walking foot to our machine, and what I love about this Janome 3160 QDC is that it comes with the walking foot and a guide. So you've got everything you need to get started. I'm also going to remove the accessory case. This gives us a little more room to work with when we are putting our tube over the machine. And so I've already set up our guide to be spaced the same as the top rows here. So that is a really nice way to keep things nice and straight. So you can just put your guide down on the previous line of stitching, and then you can just start quilting around the project. As you get along, you just want to maneuver your project around so that you're not bunched up, and just make sure your lining on the inside is smooth as well. When you get to the end, I like to use a couple of tacking stitches just to hold that in place, and then you can cut your thread. Continue quilting lines down the rest of your bin. Once you've finished quilting it, you can turn it so that the lining is facing the outside. And then we're going to close up the bottom with a 1/2 inch seam. Going through a lot of layers here, so I did keep my walking foot on. Now you're going to trim that bottom seam to a 1/4 inch, and we're going to do a zigzag stitch in that seam allowance. I have switched back to my regular sewing machine foot, and just zigzag along that. That'll just really secure that seam. Once you've zigzag stitched, we're going to box the corners, and that gives that bin the depth that we need. So you're going to match up the side seam and the bottom seam, and then we're going to draw a line across the bottom. It's a 5-inch long line. Now we're going to straight stitch on the drawn line. Once you've boxed the corners, we're going to turn it right side out. And then we're going to glue those little triangles that you created when you boxed the corners down to the bottom. And we're using this Fabric Fuse by Thermoweb, and it's machine washable. So that's really handy for this bin. Just if you ever want to wash it, the glue won't wash out on you. So those triangles on the bottom, just give it a little more heft and bulk. If you don't like that, you could go ahead and cut those off and zigzag stitch those. And then we just press the corners to give our bin a little bit more shape. And now you've got this adorable bin that could be used in really any room of your home to match your decor.